And so one of the first things we are going to be, hey guys, it's nice to see you. One of the first things we're going to be discussing is obviously Brian Kohberger. Brian Kohberger is a case we have not covered in a little minute. You know, Chronicles of Olivia and I went out to Moscow, Idaho on 2 tours out there in November and at the end of November and at the end of December. We did 2 back-to-back trips out there a month apart to cover this case. And, you know, this case was quite challenging. We knew something was off when we first got there at the end of November. But by our second trip in December, we were out front of their house when we started learning of Brian Kohberger. And we immediately went over to his apartments over in the Washington State University campus. And we watched them execute the search warrant on his apartment out front with about 15 or 20 other media personnel from news to publication. And I've got to say, this has been a really crazy story. We all feel, I've never seen a probable cause affidavit so thoroughly written in a case in my life. I've gone through a lot of these cases. We've reviewed a lot of these cases. And I remember when I read it, my mouth fell open. And the first thing was I've never seen something so thorough before for a probable cause affidavit. And it answered a lot of questions, but it kind of sparked a lot of anger in people, because that's when we learned that one of the roommates that lived in the home with the 4 victims had seen the assailant and did not call law enforcement. And it kind of did this whole weird thing with that case. And so it really upset a lot of people and had people attack this particular roommate. So a lot of attention was on this case. The attention on this case has died down significantly from where we were a year ago. That's a good thing, but that's also a very, very bad thing, because, you know, that attention, I felt like, was some type of pressure to help get this case moved along. And we were doing that because the Goncalves family and the other victims' families wanted this case moved along. So we were trying to do that, but as we were pushing, we were getting, you know, obviously hitting those walls, because they needed to slow this case down. We knew that at some point the defense was going to start slowing this case down quite a considerable amount. So this most recent stuff is the defense team is actually wanting to get the subpoenas. They're basically saying, they just went to court, they're basically saying that the state is not turning over information, that there's this key piece of evidence that was derived by a subpoena, and they have not gotten that information. They want all subpoenas that were written in this case to be submitted to them so they can see the subpoena and they can see what the results of those subpoenas are. Quite frankly, I was reading this. I don't think that a order has been provided. Much like many of the orders, they do the hearing, and it's like a week or 2 later that they get the order in from the judge. So I don't see where the order has, you know, the judge has ruled on this. It looks like a motion to compel hearing that they must have had. They're still very tight-lipped with this piece of evidence that is associated, and I'm speaking of they being the defense, is being very tight-lipped about the piece of evidence that they're trying to get the subpoena for. I'd have to think that the only key piece of evidence is DNA. So whatever the IgG, DNA, they've still been hitting this IgG and DNA stuff quite hard, but it is exculpatory in all fairness. And in all fairness, I have to think in a case like this that the judge is going to order those subpoenas to be turned over for justice. I just feel that it could be exculpatory. It goes to the heart of the case. They're feeling like they're not receiving all the information from the state, and they're challenging that. So they want to be ultra sure that they have received all the discovery that the state has, because even though the state may not use a piece of information or a piece of evidence that they have, it could be used by the defense to exonerate their clients. So they have to be able to get all of the information and know exactly what brought the state knocking on Brian Kohberger's door. And us as the public, we should be demanding that as well. We should want that as well, because God forbid it, what if we're wrongly accused one day of a crime we did not commit? We would want these laws and these rules and procedures in place for us in our defense. So we have to look at it like that as well. You know, I believe Brian Kohberger is guilty of this based upon the probable cause affidavit. I said and maintained from the very beginning, if they can prove 70 or 75%, actually I said like 80, but really 70% of it, he's toast. He's absolutely toast. There is something else that I want to go over, but you're going to have to give me a minute because I am on this phone, and some of this stuff is just a little bit harder to locate when it's... There's a post here that I wanted to read to you guys, and I can't remember where it is. Here it is. Here it is. Okay, so... we are going to move on over to Sebastian Rogers. Thanks, girl next door. God bless you. We're going to move over to Sebastian Rogers. Sebastian Rogers is the 15-year-old autistic boy that disappeared from his bed inside his home in Hendersonville, Tennessee. He was last seen by his mother, which was the only person that we've learned was in the house with him at the time that he disappeared. I just did an interview with Sebastian Rogers' father, Seth Rogers, on my YouTube channel and asked him a bunch of questions, some that he was unable to answer and some that he did answer. We were able to learn a little more new information, and we were able to learn a whole lot about Sebastian Rogers and who he was as an individual. And I think, you know, we definitely saw a father that loved his son, that really cared about his son, and that really took his son's health and his disabilities to heart. And he wanted to find, he didn't want his son on a whole bunch of medication. He didn't want that for his son. He wanted his son to be able to take care of himself and find natural ways to deal with his disabilities if possible. Using only medication as a last resort. He seemed really like he wanted to, he was teaching his son how to cook. He was teaching his son, you know, stuff. And then when I asked him about, you know, what were some of the fun things that Sebastian loved to do, he was talking about, you know, going out to the park. And I never heard Katie talk about taking her son to the park. Yeah, that's important. Those types of things, thank you guys. Those types of things are important to me when covering these cases. You know, how is the person treated? Whether it was a child or an adult, you know, how was this person treated? And I have to agree, it seemed like the parenting styles were definitely much different from one household to the other. It seemed like it was Seth that was the more nurturing parent, that understood his son's disabilities the most and understood his son so much so that his son thrived better in his environment because he understood what his son needed. And I really think that really did kind of show. Now, there's a lot of people that, you know, obviously will tear the interview apart. It's expected, you know, depending on what their narrative is. You know, they are going to either drive a good message or a bad message. The bottom line is that we learned a lot of new stuff. Some of it wasn't very pretty. Some of it was just opinion. You know, what was his opinion about something? Like I asked him if he thought his son walked out of the house. And he went through the laundry list of things that he would believe that if his son willingly walked out of the house, that his son would have taken with him. And none of those items were taken with him. And then we find out that his son, he was teaching his son to make sure his phone was plugged in and to answer the phone anytime it rang because it was either going to be his dad or his mom. And he needed to make sure it was charged up so he could answer the phone when they called. So it was really interesting to hear him talk about that cell phone because we had been led to believe for so long from Katie and Chris that he didn't really like the phone. He didn't really care for the phone. Karen, at this point, I think I know what your TikTok name is. I just wanted to throw that out there to you. I see you do that every time. I know who you are over here. So, you know, and it was just funny because it doesn't make sense. Seth, truly, we're not dealing with a normal, and even if we were dealing with a normal boy would have still taken something with him. He wouldn't have just walked out of the house without anything. And like Seth had said, in order for him to walk out without his shoes on, it would have had to have been so extreme he didn't have time to grab them. It had to be so extreme that he didn't have time to grab them. So, and he's apparently has expressed his concern to law enforcement as well as Katie that he believes that story is, you know, manure, so to speak. Because he even said, Katie, in the interview with me, he said, and Katie knows I think it's, you know, bull. So I have to look at it like that. But here's something. And we're talking about this because we've been going over the Dutch's interview. Oh, thank you, Love Bug. We've been going over the Dutch's interview. And the Dutch's interview had some stuff we haven't heard. It was one of the first interviews. It was the first interview. And what they had in that interview versus what they said several days later in this green shirt interview were a lot different than what we heard. Had I not gone back to the Dutch's interview, I would have never known to the gravity of how much their story had changed. It was very eye-opening for me. And one of those things was she fell asleep on the couch. At first, I'm sure all of you guys have had an opportunity to go over there and check out the video. And if you haven't, it's got this over. It's on my main channel over on YouTube. But this is it. This is the title of it. And in that, we break it down. Evil Exists did a clip this morning. And in that clip, it had one specific topic that they were talking about from the Dutch's interview. And it's the way that he cut, or the way that she cut the clip and put it into her video, that I realized, that I heard what Katie actually said, because when we had covered the interview, I thought she said that she went to sleep at 9 when Sebastian went to bed and woke up at 10. And I remember I was like, she said she went to bed shortly after she woke up, and she didn't go to bed until midnight. That's 2 hours. That's not shortly after she woke up. But it's the way that Evil Exists clipped this particular clip that I heard it again. This is like the 5th or 6th time I heard it. But it was different than the way I had understood it. She didn't say that. What she had said was that she had talked to Duchess before she gave this live interview, and so Duchess kind of had some background on information, so she was kind of filling in some things. So she said, so Katie, you told me that you fell asleep on the couch at 10, but your son went to bed at 9, and then you woke up. And she's like, yes. And then she goes, and then you woke up a little while later, and she, like, around midnight, and they both said around midnight, yes, and she went to bed. And then Chris decides, after she makes that statement, to come in and say, well, I want to make sure everything's crystal clear and transparent for your audience. We did have a significant telephone conversation. She called me about 9:43 to 9:46, and we were on the phone for a significant amount of time. Then how did she fall asleep at 10 on the couch, and you guys have a conversation for a significant amount of time? And how did you wake her up when you were on the phone to tell her to go to bed? Because he clearly states in this interview he woke her up. So something is not smelling very good here. And then we learn later that there was a thud at this 10 o'clock time frame. But she was on the phone with him. So this comes to the topic of conversation here. This comes from one of the people that are writing here. She's one of the top contributors of the Find Sebastian Rogers group. And I don't know if she's an admin or if she's just a top contributor, but I see her name in here quite a lot. Her name's Michelle. I believe she's one of our subs in here, either here or on YouTube. And it says, something that still bothers me to this day is Katie said she heard a thud, right? But Chris still has never spoke on hearing Katie talk to Sebastian about if he was okay or not. Also, she was asleep on the couch, ? But I heard a thud at the same time. Oh, let's not forget doing schoolwork let's not forget doing schoolwork too, all on the 3-hour call. How in the heck do you do schoolwork, hear a thud, and talk to Sebastian if you were asleep on the couch? Which one is it? Why has Chris Proudfoot never said or spoken on that part? This is a huge red flag that speaks on everything, but never that part. Interesting. Hi, Priscilla. It's nice to hear you. Or nice to see you. Honestly, don't think she heard anything that was just thrown in there. Actually, it was thrown in there, but I think I understand the reason why they threw it in there. I think I've figured it out as to why it crept into the story. Is because at some point they realized that, the old crap factor, right? It's Sunday, so I try to refrain from profanity. If you're wondering why today I went to church, so I got to get better on the cussing. I understand that my preacher tells me I need to get better on the cussing. I'm trying to get better on the cussing, but especially on Sunday, I try to really work to refrain. And I some days are better than others. Some Sundays are better than others. But getting back to this, I'm not sure how Chris and Katie are going to figure this situation out, because now we have the whole thing with Duchess. We have people finally paying attention to what was said. We're seeing them modify their stuff, and then we need to get back to why I think that thud was introduced. I think they know that law enforcement's breathing down their neck. I think they knew it. They knew it early on, because we heard on Duchess, you could hear that they had been questioned extensively about certain topics, because they kept saying, law enforcement asked us that too. That's the $1 million question. We've talked to law enforcement about that. We can't figure it out. So law enforcement was challenging them on the information. I think the thud was added in there because when push comes to shove, I think Katie and Chris are going to try to say it was just a terrible accident and they got scared and didn't know what to do. I think that's why the thud was added. I think that's why it was added. I think it's their contingency plan. It's their plan B. And if you guys don't know what plan B is, it's when you're dealing with these criminal cases. It doesn't really matter any case. She's basically a third party that you blame it on. Whether it's an anonymous third party, it's your brother, it's your mother, it's your best friend. It's their fault, not yours. It's a plan B. You plan B'd it. But that's what I think. That's really kind of bringing you guys full circle. I think a thud. Bertha says, I think the thud was added because if a body is found, there's going to be, yeah. I think that. But see, even if it's not, see, the way Tennessee law works, and I learned this from the Summer Wells case, is that the worst, well, I shouldn't say the worst case. There could be a worst case scenario than this. But after 7 years in Tennessee, if somebody hasn't been heard or seen, they can be deemed deceased. So I think the way law enforcement is doing it is they're not going to really do anything until the person's deemed deceased. I think that's what they're waiting on with Summer Wells. I think that's what they're going to wait on with Sebastian Rogers. I pray to God not, but sometimes I just feel Like, that's what it's going to be. So even if they don't find him, and it's not really, they can't really tell what happened, and say they decide to go after, in 7 years to go after mom and stepdad for second degree charges, then they're going to be relying back on this thud, in my opinion. And then they'll probably get something more on the lines of abuse of a corpse, or, something like that. I don't know. But that would be more in line if they can't find anything. But I'm hoping, it seems to me, I don't want to mislead or provide false hope in my audience, but there's a piece of me that believes law enforcement is truly doing everything they can. And there is a piece of me that believes that if we're finding this stuff that is smelling to high heaven for Chris and Katie, the stuff that they have access to has to be a lot worse. So I have to think that they are moving this case in the right direction. It sounds like they have started opening up communications with Seth a little bit on the status of this case, which is wonderful. To be honest with you, I'd rather him be in the know with law enforcement, even if he had to never be on a social media platform again. I don't ever want that from him, because we need to keep his son's name out there. But what I'm trying to say is I'd prefer him having the information at the end of the day, for whatever that means, whether we get it or not, whether we know it or not, just as long as he knows it, because he's dad and he should know what's going on in his son's case. I feel like he was kind of robbed, if you will, because when CPS was involved, they weren't informing him. So he literally had no knowledge of what's going in the house, and now his son's missing, and law enforcement is withholding all the information, so he has no knowledge of what's going on now. So it's I really just can't even imagine what Seth's going through right now, just feeling so... It has to be a total failure feeling to think that you had no idea of any of this. You know what I'm saying? And it's not really his fault, because again, CPS wasn't he doesn't have a crystal ball. He's an hour and a half away. He's an hour and a half away from his son. So he doesn't, it's not like it's in the same town, or, he can hear, rumors. He's in a completely separate area. So I gotta think that he probably must feel like a total failure, because, here he is, and he's so blindsided by, he goes to work like it's a normal day, and by the time he gets off work, his whole world's turned upside down, and he's just in there what the hell just happened? You go from being in this illusion that everything's perfect, fine and dandy, kumbaya, to being smacked right into reality with the worst dose of it. And it hasn't stopped since that moment. I don't know. I don't know. It just... And then to go from having communication with the parent, the father and the stepfather or the mother and the stepfather of your child, you go from speaking to them and just being at their house and just, appearing to be concerned, to being completely thrown under the bus and cut off, and nobody help you. All the while saying, hey, let's work together, but working together, but basically meant for Chris, everybody just stay home and not do anything together. That's what he wanted. When Chris went up to Seth to say, let's work together, what he meant by work together is Seth stopped searching. What he meant by work together is Seth go and become a hermit in his house, so it doesn't make them look like hermits. That's what Chris wanted whenever he said, let's work together, because Seth said, sure, let's work together. And after that, they cut off all communication. Literally all communication. And Seth went and basically went out to the public and got completely railroaded, because he said, hey, we need to work with them. And, if you guys can't put your BS aside, basically F off. And everybody got all bent out of shape over that. And he's just trying to work with this man to find his son. And people are thinking about their emotions and well-being is more important than this man or his son. It's just stupid. Meanwhile, Chris and Katie never helped. Even going out of their way to go to that vigil to talk to Seth. Yet they didn't stay at the vigil. They weren't swarmed by people at the vigil. He went up to Seth, no problem. And then they left and went to a motorcycle shop. After trying to tell Seth, let's work together. Seth should have looked at him, sure, I'm happy to work with you, but it starts right now. Prepare what you're going to say to the public. Prepare what you're going to... That's the way I am. You offer your help? Sure, let's start right now. Tomorrow? Oh, no. You're here. Let's start right now. Beverly, it's the 17-hour trip. I feel... I'm confident something happened in that 17-hour trip. I'm confident something happened in that. I don't know why, but I absolutely believe something happened with that 17-hour trip. He was 3.5 hours away at a campground that he paid monthly for. So from my understanding, he had no urgency to go get that camper. The lot was paid for. My understanding, it was still paid for when they went back. I could be wrong, but I do know that those lots out there are rented by the month. Like, I can't go take mine over there for a couple days. From my understanding, I could be wrong though, but I think it was monthly rental. So again, what was the urgency to bring that back? Because when they brought the camper back, all they did was pack it up with stuff. What stuff did they pack in the camper? We don't know. And they took that camper with them. But it's not when they took that camper with them, when he left to go pick up that camper, because that was the time that I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody that had ample opportunity to take care of business. And I couldn't figure it doing the time with him being at the house, trying to get to work from 5:15. And I've always maintained since I heard he went back for that vehicle. I thought he literally went back for it and came back. I thought he was back within 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours tops. I had no idea that he stayed the night. That blew my mind, that he would stay the night. You got a missing kid. You had to get law enforcement permission to even leave to go get your camper, allegedly. Oh, hey, hindsight. Let me see what you said. Give me a second. I got to go up. Does anyone know what the camper looked like that he had there as opposed to what was brought home? It looked like the same camper, but somebody sent me something. Somebody sent me something in my email. Let me see if I can find it. I started. Hold on, let's just keep going. I'm going to start it down. I had a lot of emails today. There was one. I'm trying to find it, and it doesn't look like it's always when I'm looking for something that I never find it. But there was somebody had sent me. It might not be on here. It might have been on Messenger, where they sent me the link to. Oh, maybe it was in Messenger. Hold on, maybe it was. They sent me, and it was to a sale of a camper. But the camper looked like what they had, and somebody says, does this look right? Here, oh, it is. Okay, so it was from Wendy. Let me see if it'll open it up in the... It's saying the page requested cannot be displayed. Well, I still have a picture in my messenger. Let me see if I can show you that without doxing the person. That looks like their camper. That looks like their camper right there. And it's for sale by one of their family members. Or was for sale. I keep clicking on it. It's a Montana too. Which they had a Montana hooked up to the back of Chris's truck. It looks just like the one that they have. I'm trying to get it, sorry guys, I'm trying to get it close enough without having to take my background off. See? It looks like the RV. Or the fifth wheel that they have. Well, it was being sold by a Rosenbaum. Beth Rosenbaum here, Heer, was selling a 2016 Montana High Country 41-foot fifth wheel camper. It's a two bedroom, 1.5 bath, sleeps 8. And that looks like theirs. But I don't know if it is because, they make them similar. But I just thought it was pretty interesting because, I also heard there was a similar fifth wheel at their, but that's all rumor. I can't verify it. I have no way of verifying it or confirming it, whether the Bowersox have a similar RV. Somebody said that they it might have been possible that they, switched out campers for stuff. But it's, from my understanding, I think law enforcement went to the Bowersox house as well. I truly believe he's in another state. I wish I could believe that. I every time somebody, and no offense, Michelle, I just want to ask you this. Why do you well, let me ask you this. First of all, do you think he was that he's healthy in another state, or do you just believe he's in another state? Maybe I should ask that question first, because that's a little vague as to his well-being. Do you think I don't need to elaborate. I think you get what my question is. I need to ask you that question first before I go over to the next one. He stated in a YouTube interview that he paid monthly. Yes, I knew it. See, I went on to that campsite because, to be honest with you, when I thought I was going to be able to make it down there, the car's in the, you guys know about the car. I'm not going to go through that again. But when I thought I was going to go down there, I was going to stay at the campground. I won't lie. I called down there to see if I could stay there. And that's how I found out it was rented monthly, because I was thinking, do I really want to stay here a month? I mean, I don't have to stay there. I mean, the channel, it's really it's the channel's decision. The channel pays for it, so it's the channel's decision. I'm talking about my YouTube channel. So, I don't know, I didn't go there, so we didn't have to have those conversations, but I was going to stay there. I've got night vision binoculars. I wanted to make sure I was doing everything lawfully and legally, honestly. I do, when I do my stuff, I do it lawfully and legally. I don't sit there and encroach on private property. I don't do that. If there's something I got to pay to be there, I'll pay it. I do my job lawfully and legally. I have just as much right as they do. I'm sorry. It's just the way I work, guys. Does it surprise you? Does it surprise you I would have stayed there? If it surprised you, if that surprises you, you guys don't know me too well. I would have been quiet as mouse too. You wouldn't have to worry about that. They wouldn't even have known I was there. I'd have been quiet as mouth too. I'd have been creeping all over there, just walking around. You got to get your exercise in. I'll be taking laps, going up and talking to everybody. By the time I was done there, I'm telling you, I would have been friends with every single person in that thing. We would have been I would have been making coffee and going around. You guys don't know me. I know how to work it. Okay? I know how to work it. I'd have had a big old pot of coffee. I'd have been going out there, meeting the people, handing them some coffee. Yeah. Hey. Hey, Jane. Did you get your coffee this morning? I got some coffee for you. Don't worry about it, honey. I'll bring you some coffee over there, Jane. Don't worry about it. Want me to bring you some donuts? How about some bacon and eggs? Guys, I I know how to work you guys, okay? Usually it comes with a lot of food or candy. I'm telling you, you guys know it. You guys are around me, and you know I'd get some. You probably say nobody's getting nothing from me. Okay, you can say that. You haven't experienced me yet. It's funny how things just fall out of your mouth when you're around me. Let Betty be crystal clear. You guys wonder why I love coffee so much. Everybody loves coffee. Just about everybody. It's either tea or coffee. So you always get one. I'm telling you, I'd have Jane camping next to him, giving me calls with her step by step. You'll never believe what they're doing now. What are they doing, Jane? I don't know, but they're kind of weird. Yeah, they are. That's why I'm over here watching them. Well, got you watching them now. Wouldn't that be crazy if their neighbor was really named Jane? They'd be they would be peeking at Jane Doe. You know what I'm saying? That's why I picked Jane. But can you imagine if the person next to him was like a Jane? And I'm sitting here saying, Jane, can you tell me what they're doing? And they're like, is Jane talking to Betty? We need to move the camper. But getting back to the thud. The thud is important. I personally don't believe the thud happened. That's just me personally. I personally don't believe the thud happened. I personally believe it's added in as a contingency plan later. I really do. Because I've listened to enough interviews up to the green shirt, up until the time, because they didn't even interject that thud in the green shirt interview or the hands interview. It didn't come in until later. So it feels like it was like it was so many days after their son disappeared that it is plausible that they spoke to an attorney by this point. And that might be some of the assistance that they've been giving them to help them correct their statements. Just a thought. That absolutely is important if it happened, even if it didn't happen. The thud was interjected in there for a reason. The thud is important no matter how we look at it, whether it happened or didn't happen. In my opinion, of course. I don't either, but I think it's her timeline sucks. Her timeline's ever changing. It's the Wells timeline, the Swiss cheese of timelines. Can a mod pin my comment? Hold on, which one is it? I don't know. I didn't see anything get pinned. I may not even have a mod in here right now. I have no idea. I really don't do mods over here because we don't really do anything that pisses people off typically. So nobody really bothers me over here. You know, we get we get an occasional butthead, but for the most part, you guys are pretty chill, and you guys, you know. So if you guys wrestle on your own, you know, on other stuff, I don't care as long as you ain't wrestling it over here. Who I busted? What is it? What are they? Busted because, you guys are just coming in. So you'll have to watch it. It's on my other channel. And it's us going through some information that we heard on Dutch's. And it kind of blows their call to smithereens. Did the call happen? Did it not? I don't know. I believe it had to have happened because it sounds like law enforcement questioned them about the length of it. But on Dutch's, she had spoken to Katie before apparently they corrected their story. So the way it was is Katie's basically telling us in the Dutch's interview she fell asleep at 10 o'clock at night and didn't get up until midnight. And since that Dutch's interview, that story completely changed. The reason why it's so important is because that story completely changed. And that was one of her original stories. So so she must have told law enforcement at some point that she was asleep on the couch. And they're like, well, how did you carry on a 3-hour conversation if you were asleep on the couch? Something like that happened. I guarantee it. Because Chris had to make things crystal clear and tell everybody that she called him at 9:43. But she had just got done right before he said that, agreeing with Duchess that yes, she did fall asleep on the couch at 10 and did not wake up until midnight. And then Chris wants to make things crystal clear and wants to make sure that he's transparent with all of us by saying that they had a call that lasted a significant amount of time, and that she called him at 9:43 to 9:46. Well, she just told Duchess literally right before that she went to sleep at 10. Did she literally fall asleep on you in 12 minutes and you literally stayed on the phone listening to her snore? It doesn't make sense. So now her story of what happened that night before Sebastian went to bed has holes in it and doesn't make sense. And then you couple it with him disappearing and that story not making sense. And what you have here is Chris and Katie the night before, last people to see, speak, and everything, and the first people that see and speak in the first thing in the morning. That's problematic. She went to sleep speaking to him, and the very first thing she calls is him when she wakes up. He's not here. It's time to do this. It's now time to put the act on. It's now time to call law enforcement. It's now the time to report our son missing. He did not wake her up. If she fell asleep, there's no way. Seth just told us that she sleeps like a rock. That when Sebastian was born and she would come in and fall asleep, that, she worked all day, had school full time, plus he dealt with his son all day long. And when she came in and went to sleep and he thought it would be her turn to kind of take care of the baby's literally screaming and she won't even budge. He says she slept like a rock. So my question would be, if she did fall asleep on the couch, how would Chris be able to wake her up if he's on the phone, if she sleeps like a rock? It seems like no matter how loud he could possibly be on that speaker, it would not be loud enough. I disagree, Classy. I think people have made Seth. Did he make mistakes? I think he made mistakes. I think every parent that raises children for the first time make a whole host of mistakes. You got to remember that this was their first child. I truly believe that I know for a fact when I had my granddaughter, as careful as I was as a grandparent, my granddaughter has rolled off a bed. I remember falling asleep trying to feed my granddaughter a baby bottle. I've done, I think maybe I've lost my cool or screamed at my granddaughter inappropriately and had to apologize to her before because, again, I'm not a perfect person. I've made my own mistakes. Had I done it again, by grandchild 3, I was a professional, but that first grandchild, oh Lord. You know what? I'm joking and I'm being funny, and I am being funny when I say this, but I'm lucky she's alive. We make horrible things. We don't protect things like we would. We should have little pluggies. In the things. I remember there's been times I turned around and she's going for the plug. I was like, no. So I think people beat up Seth. You know what the bottom line is he cared about that what that child ingested. He cared what kind of medication that boy had. He tried to teach that boy to cook. He was there on the sidelines at every single one of his games and things like that. Sounds like a pretty, the reason why I'm up to bat for him is because I've saw some deadbeat fathers. I've seen some real deadbeat fathers. And some semi-deadbeat fathers. And I can tell you, Seth doesn't remind me of either. He reminds me of a normal dad that made normal mistakes raising his child. His disabled child, which nobody is accustomed to raising. And one that had a very rare disease. People make mistakes. Especially a parent, because you look at your child like normal. Like any normal parent looks at their normal child. In the back of your mind, when they're outside, you got to think of their disability. But you know what? Sometimes, people are normal. People are normal. I've always envied the households that never argued, right? I've always envied that. I've never in my life been in a household that never argued or never had problems. I truly do not know what that's like. And it's not an experience this girl has ever had. So for all of you that have had that experience, God bless you. Cherish it. But and Cookie, my issue is I try to always put myself in those people, and I know I'm an imperfect person, and what would I do? Honestly, I don't know. I really don't know what I would do, but I know I'd make a lot of mistakes. You know why? Because I've made a lot of mistakes my entire life. It's part of learning and growth. And I think you said you're a teacher or something like that, and of all people, you should understand that. For which things my birth father 6 feet under. So, if you're, and I don't know if you're talking about you being a teacher, but if you're a teacher of all people, you should know, because teachers, you guys have a lot of kids, and I'm sure you've made a lot. I mean, even in your teaching, if you are a teacher, I'm sure the stuff you did at the very beginning of your teaching career versus what you do now, I'm sure you made a lot of mistakes in your teaching career. I mean, not, I don't want to say you're like a horrible teacher or anything. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say, I'm sure, like even me, when I've done work, like the work that I used to do, like for example, drywall, right? When I first started, I made terrible mistakes drywalling, but you had to keep throwing the mud on the wall before you got really good at it. That's all I'm saying, right? That's all I'm saying. Now I'm a professional, but I can tell you it took a lot of bad drywall jobs to get that drywall job right. I shouldn't say bad draw. It took a lot of sanding, okay, guys? I just want to let you know the one great thing about drywall is if you get it a little too clumpy, get yourself a hand sander. It comes down. Oh, I'm not a teacher. She is. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, that's all I was trying. And I get it. I get some people, but you know what? I listen to Seth. There's a lot of things I think that he reminded me of my father, building with your hands. So my dad taught me how to do electrical work. I remember being on I was on his electrical site since I was 2 years old. He didn't, until my mom absolutely made him take me, because I was a daddy's little girl when I was a kid. Unless my mom absolutely made my dad take me to daycare, he would take me to the job site with me if he could. If it was a job that he couldn't take me on or it was too dangerous, he wouldn't take me on. But the ones that he could, where he's just wiring fans or something, and I can hand him a screwdriver or a flathead or something like that, so, I mean, he taught me things. I remember the first time, that I saw my dad cook a ham. I remember the first time I helped my dad, with a plumbing job. I remember my dad always saying, I'm going to teach you this so you don't have to depend on a man. So it's like there was a lot of things that he said that kind of, not obviously he's not my dad, but the kind of reminded me of experiences I had with my own father. And so, oh, now I get it. Okay, so that's her name, ESL. Sorry, ESL, I didn't even see you in here. You must be the teacher. It's nice to see you. But I don't know. I felt like, and I know my dad's imperfect, I think all of our parents are imperfect. I mean, I was lucky I did, I'm here. This was back when they didn't force, seat belts. I remember being on my dad's van. He had a ladder rack, and I remember getting in between his ladder, and he would drive down the road. I'm on top of the van, guys. I just want to let you know, this was back in the day. Everybody did that stuff. Okay? Everybody did that stuff. Nobody looked at my daddy all funny and saying, oh my God, get that kid down from there. She's gonna die. We're up there. Whee! He's probably only going 5 or 10 miles an hour, but still, it was a long drop. If I fell out, I'd hit my head and break it. Sometimes parents just did fun stuff with their children. If they got hurt, they went to the hospital. Just saying. Oops. Bad parenting. I don't know. I sometimes enjoyed bad parenting personally. Come on, you guys have some of those memories. You do, especially if you're older than me, because you guys were wild. Don't tell me you weren't wild. I see grandma over there in the corner like, I can't believe these kids. Uh-huh. Let me side-eye you a little bit. I know about the roaring 20s, honey. I know about the roaring 30s, 50s, and the 60s. The 60s was when you started getting those little colorful Tic Tacs that you guys like to, right? Okay. No cell phones to document it. It was like Vegas. Dirt road, my dad. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, out in my, like, the stuff that our parents would have been in jail. Like, all of our parents. Stop it. Like, now I'm starting to, like, now some memories are starting to roll in. I think every single one of our parents in today's society would have been arrested. I'm just saying. Because I remember now going out to Mayaca City. And I remember being 7 years old and my daddy teaching me to drive a stick shift. He was contributing to the delinquency of minor. I was driving a car. I remember staying out there. Listen to this. My grandfather used to give me and my sister the key to that big old caddy. You know, the big ones? The ones that look like freaking boats. And I had to drive the caddy up to the mailbox because my grandpa couldn't do it. So me and my little sister at 8 and 9 years old took the car up to the post office. I just want to let you all you people know the statutes of limitations for any criminal activity from back then has expired. So you guys are more than welcome to make the report. I don't think anybody cares. And my grandfather, God rest his soul, I don't think law is going to be able to get to him where he's at. Okay, he's up there in the Pearly Gate area. Because he was a wonderful, decent human being. So we do have that. Lots of criminal activity from parents back in my days. Based on today's societal norms, we should all be in jail. Like under the jail. Shit. You guys better run. We got a whole YouTube platform that's coming to get you guys. You horrible parents. Oh, good gracious. I know I made many of you guys think of memories yourself, and now you're thinking, okay. I bet he's got a little bit of a point. Just a little one. They were great memories. Like I said, you know what? Everybody's always bitching about that. Like, I always hear, like, oh, this person has this person. So what's their family? You know? I mean, can you imagine? Like, my family's so freaking crazy. I have a lot of experiences growing up. They're not the best experience, but they're experiences that could be applied to today's society. But I gotta tell you, it was some of the experiences were pretty enjoyable. Some of the experiences I forgot about. Some of the experiences I wish I would have forgotten about. But I still have all my digits. Okay, I didn't lose any digits in the process. You know, got all the fingers, all the toes. I think I almost lost a foot once or twice, but hey, no big deal. It's still there. We're good. The kids came out okay. We're alive. We made it to adulthood. Who cares? We got here. All right, guys. I love you. God bless. Go over there and check that out. But we got, you know, I keep saying this and share it. Like, if you guys are watching interviews and stuff like that, and you guys are hearing some things that contradict one another, start making note of that. Start sharing these in chat rooms so we can start, you know, getting the information out there. We can start looking and we can start going back and start, you know, showing everybody all these inconsistencies. Don't keep it to yourself. If you guys see something, say something. The ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And until next time, please be safe and kind to one another. Happy Sunday, y'all. Love you and God bless.